I held the check in my hand, like it was some kind of prize. My mother-in-law stood there, glaring at me. "You don't deserve a dime," she said. "You've leeched off my son long enough." Then she lit a match and held it to the edge of the paper. I watched the flames slowly eat away at the $50,000 check. She smirked, thinking she had won. But I didn't stop her. I didn't cry or panic. I just stood still, calm. Because that check wasn't real. I had already deposited the real one into my bank account. A few days earlier, the real check came in the mail. It was from my aunt who had passed away. She left me $50,000 to help me start the bakery I had always dreamed about. I knew I couldn't leave it lying around. My mother-in-law liked to go through my things when I wasn't home. So I made a fake check using an online template. I printed it on thick paper and made it look almost perfect. Then I placed it in the drawer I knew she always searched through. I waited, knowing she would find it. Living with her wasn't easy. She treated me like I was nothing. She said I was lazy and useless. She never saw how I was finishing my master's degree and quietly planning my business. To her, I was just a wife who didn't deserve her son. My husband, Dan, never defended me. He always said, "That's just how she is." But it hurt. She made me feel small every single day. So when she found the fake check, I let her take it. She waved it around like she had caught me stealing. "This is going in the trash where it belongs," she said. Then she walked outside and dropped it into the fire pit. I followed her silently. The flames rose. The paper curled. The numbers burned away. She looked pleased with herself. "Let's see how far your little dream gets now," she said. I just nodded and smiled. I didn't argue, because I knew the truth. 2 days earlier, I had gone to the bank and deposited the real check. The money was already in a new account under my name. Everything I needed to start over was ready. She thought she had control, but she didn't. As I walked back into the house, I felt light. She thought she won. She thought she ruined everything, but all she burned was a piece of paper. My future was safe. My dream was alive. And very soon, she was going to learn that I was not as weak as she believed. Living in that house felt like walking on glass. Every day, I waited for the next rude comment, the next cold stare, the next way Doris would make me feel small. She never liked me, not from the start. No matter what I did, it was never good enough for her. She called me lazy, said I was wasting her son's time and money. To her, I was just sitting at home doing nothing. But she didn't know I was finishing my master's degree online. She didn't know I was building something on my own. I kept it quiet because I didn't trust her. Doris was good at pretending. In front of others, she smiled like she was the perfect mother-in-law. But behind closed doors, she made my life hard. She made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. She always had something to say. If I cooked dinner, she said it was too salty. If I cleaned, she said I missed a spot. If I dressed nicely, she asked who I was trying to impress. Everything I did was wrong in her eyes. Sometimes, her words weren't even the worst part. One time, I had an important job interview. I never heard back, and I felt confused. Weeks later, I found an email in the trash folder. It was from the company, asking to schedule a call. She had deleted it. Another time, I saw her take a letter from the mailbox and hide it in her purse. When I asked if she saw any mail for me, she said no. I also lost count of how many times my clothes got ruined. She said the washing machine was acting up, but it always happened to my things, never hers. I tried to talk to Dan about it. I hoped he would listen, but he never did. "She doesn't mean it," he'd say. "She's just old school." Every time I brought up something she did, he made excuses. He said I was being too sensitive. He said she just wanted what was best for her. But I knew better. She wanted control, and he let her have it. I started keeping notes. At first, it was just little things. The dates she made comments. The times she moved my things or touched my computer. Then I started saving screenshots and photos. I emailed myself copies in case anything got deleted. I didn't know exactly what I would do with all of it, but I knew I had to protect myself. She didn't see me as family. She saw me as someone she needed to push out. So I stayed quiet, but I watched everything. I listened. I made sure I remembered. Because someday, I knew I'd need the truth on my side. She thought I was weak. She thought I had no power. But I was learning. I was planning. And I was waiting for the right moment. Dan and I were supposed to be a team, but it never felt that way. At first, I thought things would get better with time. I thought once we got used to living with his mother, we'd find our balance. But that never happened. Dan leaned on her for everything, even though we were grown adults. She helped him buy the house, and she never let him forget it. Every time there was an argument, she reminded him it was her name on the loan and her money that made it possible. And Dan just nodded like a child being scolded. I used to believe he was caught in the middle. I wanted to think he just didn't know how to stand up to her. But slowly, I saw the truth. He wasn't caught. He was comfortable. She handled the big things, and he liked it that way. If she wanted something done, he did it. If she said I was being difficult, he agreed. He didn't defend me. He didn't ask me how I felt. He just followed her lead. When I received the inheritance, I didn't tell anyone at first. It was a gift from my aunt. It meant a lot to me, not just the money, but the chance to do something on my own. I was planning to use it to start a small business. I wasn't ready to tell anyone until I had a clear plan. But Dan found the letter one day and read it. I asked him not to say anything. He nodded. I believed he would keep it between us. The next day, his mother brought it up during dinner. She acted like it was her money too. She smiled and said we could finally fix the broken tiles in the hallway. Then she listed 5 other things she thought needed repairs. I sat there shocked. I hadn't even told her. That's when I knew Dan had told her everything. Without asking me, without thinking twice. Later that night, I asked him why. He said, "It's not a big deal. We're all family." He didn't understand. He didn't care. He only saw the money as something we could use on the house, on things his mother wanted. He didn't ask what I needed. He didn't ask what I dreamed of. All he cared about was keeping her happy. That's when it hit me. I was alone. I didn't have a partner. I had someone who chose his mother every time. Someone who wouldn't protect me, even from the small things. I looked at him and felt nothing but distance. I used to feel hurt. Now I just felt clear. I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew now. I didn't need to explain anything anymore. My silence wasn't weakness. It was a shield. I had stopped trying to get him to understand. I had stopped hoping he would change. I had started thinking about my own future. Quietly, carefully. He didn't notice. Neither did she. They thought I had given up. They were wrong. I was just getting started. The day the check arrived, I stood by the mailbox holding the envelope in my hands. It was real. It had my name on it, signed and stamped. $50,000. My aunt had kept her promise. She believed in me more than anyone else ever did. This money wasn't just paper. It was freedom, a future, a fresh start. But I couldn't celebrate. Not in that house. Not around them. I knew if they found out, they'd find a way to take it from me, or ruin it out of spite. I needed to be careful. I went back inside quietly, made sure no one saw me. I placed the real check in a folder, and hid it deep inside a box of old school books under the bed. Then I turned on my laptop and got to work. I found a template that looked like the real check. I copied every line, number, and signature. I adjusted the font, the date, even the watermarks. It wasn't perfect, but it looked close enough. I printed it on thick paper and folded it just like the real one. Then I slipped it into the top drawer of the side table in the hallway. That drawer wasn't mine. It was meant for spare keys and takeout menus. But Doris always opened it. She pretended to tidy up, but I knew she searched it often, hoping to find something to use against me. That's where I left the fake check. Not hidden, just careless enough to make it seem like a mistake. I didn't say a word to anyone. I waited. 2 days passed. She didn't mention anything, and neither did Dan. Then one afternoon, I heard her call my name from the kitchen. Her voice was sharp. She was holding the fake check in her hand like it was poison. "You think you're so clever," she said. "Keeping secrets in my house?" I didn't answer. I just stood still. She waved the check at me, her face red with anger. "You don't deserve this kind of money. Not after everything my son has done for you. You've done nothing to earn this." Her words were loud and ugly. Dan stood behind her, watching but saying nothing. He didn't even look surprised. I didn't fight back. I didn't explain. I just let her talk. She opened the back door and walked to the small fire pit in the yard. I followed her. Dan stayed inside. She held the check above the flames and smiled. "Let's see what happens to your little plans now," she said. Then she dropped it in. I watched it burn. The corners curled. The ink melted. The numbers disappeared. She looked at me, expecting tears, maybe anger. I didn't give her either. I kept my face calm and quiet. I looked her in the eyes and said, "You're right. I guess I don't deserve anything." She smirked and turned away like she'd won something. But she hadn't. All she burned was paper. The real check was safe, already hidden, already planned for. That moment was the test. I needed to know how far she'd go. I needed to see how easily she could destroy something that wasn't her. And now I had my answer. I went back inside and sat down, acting like nothing had happened. She was proud of herself, and Dan just avoided looking at me. They thought it was over. They thought I had lost. But I was only getting stronger. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't angry. I was ready. The house felt colder after that day, but not because of the weather. It was because something inside me had changed. I was done hoping for kindness. I was done waiting for support. I had stayed quiet for so long, but now my silence had a purpose. I was planning something for myself, and I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. I took the real check and went to the bank. I wore plain clothes and tied my hair up so no one would notice me. I opened a new account under my name only. No one else could touch it. I deposited the check, and the money was safe. Just doing that made me feel like I could breathe again. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had control. After that, I went to the post office and filled out a change of address form. I had everything sent to a nearby mailbox center, one I rented quietly. I didn't want anything important going to the house anymore. I also got a second phone, something simple, prepaid, and untraceable. I hid it in a drawer far from where anyone would look. Each day, I started packing little things. Not clothes or furniture, just papers, photos, and items that mattered most. I placed them in a small box and kept them hidden behind old books. Then I rented a storage unit under a different name. I used the money to pay several months in advance. It was small but safe, and it gave me peace of mind knowing my things had a place to go. I also looked up lawyers. I wanted to know my options. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even speak the words out loud. I searched in private and made an appointment. I met the lawyer and asked questions. She explained everything clearly. I didn't file anything yet. I just wanted to be ready, in case I needed to move quickly. I opened another account, this time for the business I wanted to start. I had dreamed of it for so long, and now it was finally within reach. I didn't tell Dan. I didn't tell Doris. They still thought I was sitting around, lost and hopeless. They thought they had crushed my plans when they burned that fake check. They thought I had nothing left. But the truth was, I had more than ever. They didn't notice the small changes. I smiled when they wanted me to. I nodded during conversations. I agreed when Doris made rude comments. I kept my voice calm and steady. They never saw what I was doing behind the scenes. They never guessed I was building a life without them. Dan spent most of his time with his mother. She still whispered in his ear and acted like the queen of the house. He followed her lead, same as always. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't ask for help. I gave them silence, and they took it as weakness. That was their mistake. They thought they had won. They thought I had given up. But I hadn't. I was just getting ready. Step by step, I was preparing for the day I would walk away, without a single word, without looking back. I started acting like nothing had changed. I told Dan I was thinking about my future and trying to figure out what I really want. He didn't ask many questions. He just nodded and said I should take Doris's advice and focus on the house for now. I smiled and agreed, pretending to listen. But inside, I was already gone. I had stopped waiting for them to understand. Now I was making my way out, step by step. While they talked about fixing tiles and painting walls, I made my own plan. Every day, I quietly packed a little more. I started with my documents, birth certificate, school papers, bank info, and anything else I might need later. I wrapped them in plastic and hid them in my bag. Then I added a few old photos, the kind that mattered only to me. Things from my childhood, a picture with my aunt, a card from my mom. I took my wedding ring off and placed it in a small box, not out of anger, just to let go. I used part of the inheritance money to pay for 6 months of rent on a small studio. It wasn't far, but it was far enough to feel like freedom. I used a different name for the lease. The place was simple, one room, a kitchenette, and a big window that let the light in. It felt quiet, safe, mine. I didn't want my mom to worry, but I also didn't want to put her in the middle of anything. I bought a small prepaid phone and wrote a short note. If I go silent, I'm fine. Don't worry. I mailed it to her with the phone inside. A few days later, I got a text on my second phone. It was from her. She wrote, "I've been waiting for this." That message gave me strength. She knew. She had always known. And she supported me without asking for detail. I didn't cry, but my hands shook a little when I read her words. For once, someone was on my side. At home, nothing seemed different. Doris still made comments at the dinner table. Dan still laughed at her jokes and acted like everything was fine. I didn't react. I smiled when they expected it. I listened when they talked. I cleaned the kitchen like always. But inside, I had already left. I made sure my storage unit was ready. I packed the last few things, some clothes, books, and small items that felt like home. I kept it light so I could move quickly if I needed to. I checked everything twice. My ID, my keys, my phone, the address of the studio, and the name on the lease. Everything was in order. I knew the day was coming. I didn't circle a date on the calendar. I didn't say goodbye. I just waited for the right moment. And when it came, I would go without a sound. No fights, no yelling, no notes left on the table. I had spent so long being quiet in that house. Now, I would leave in silence too, but this time the silence would belong to me. Doris always liked being the center of attention. One weekend, she invited my family over for dinner. I didn't know she had planned it until the same morning. I had no time to prepare, no warning. She smiled as she told me, acting like she was doing me a favor. "Your folks deserve to see how you're doing," she said sweetly, but her tone felt sharp. That evening, everyone gathered in the living room. The food was already made, the table was set, and Doris was in full control. She acted polite at first, but I could feel it coming. The little comments started as soon as everyone sat down. At first, it was small things, how I didn't help enough around the house, how tired Dan must be from working so hard. Then she said I had no real goals, that I just stayed home and did nothing. My mother shifted in her seat, uncomfortable. My sister looked at me, but Doris didn't stop. She laughed and said, "She's just been deadweight. Honestly, if not for my son, she'd be lost." Then she smiled like it was a joke. Dan laughed too and said, "It's just jokes, babe. Relax." No one else laughed. I sat there quietly. I didn't defend myself. I didn't cry. I just looked at my plate and waited for the evening to end. I had heard worse. I had felt worse. But something inside me settled that night. A quiet decision. It wasn't about getting even anymore. It was about getting free. When everyone left and the house was quiet, I went to my room. I opened my laptop to check a few things, but something felt wrong. Files were missing. Some folders I had kept private were gone. I looked through my documents, and parts of my business plans were deleted. A few personal notes were gone too. That laptop had never left my room. The only person who would have touched it was Doris. She had crossed another line, one she couldn't walk back from. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask questions. I just plugged in my USB stick and copied everything I had left: documents, emails, screenshots, and photos. Anything that showed what I had gone through, anything that might help later. I double-checked the files, then packed the USB stick into my bag with the rest of my things. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes open, listening to the quiet house. Every sound felt louder: footsteps, creaking doors, the hum of the fridge. But I wasn't scared. I was ready. I had done all I needed to do. My plan was set. When the morning came, I got up before anyone else. I didn't leave a note. I didn't leave anything behind that mattered. I walked out the door with my bag and didn't look back. I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. I wasn't running away. I was walking toward something better. The morning I left, the house was quiet. I closed the door gently behind me and didn't look back. I had no plans to explain myself, no goodbye to give. Everything I needed was with me. Everything I didn't need, I left behind. That day, Doris woke up as usual. She probably walked into the kitchen, expecting to see me making breakfast or cleaning. Instead, she found silence. My room was empty. My drawers were cleared out. The closet had only a few old things I didn't care to take. My shoes were gone. My laptop was gone. My toothbrush, my pillow, even the small photo I kept on my nightstand, gone. Dan didn't worry at first. When Doris told him I was gone, he said, "She'll be back. She's just upset." He believed I was overreacting or trying to make a point. He didn't take it seriously. He thought I'd return after a few hours or maybe the next day. But then he tried calling me. My number was no longer in service. He checked my email. No reply. He asked his mother if she had seen me or heard from me again. She hadn't. The truth was, I had already changed everything. I shut down all my social media accounts. I deleted old messages, photos, and anything that connected me to that life. I didn't want to be found. I didn't want to give anyone a way back in. I even closed the old email address I had used for years. Every link that tied me to them, I cut it clean. In my small studio apartment, I slept peacefully for the first time in a long time. There was no yelling, no footsteps outside my door, no fake kindness. I made tea in silence. I opened the window and felt fresh air on my face. I read books. I started drawing again, something I had stopped doing years ago. I was alone, but I didn't feel lonely. 1 week passed. I knew the time had come. I told my lawyer it was time to send the papers. She nodded and said, "Everything is ready." She sent the divorce documents to Dan. It was official. Inside the envelope was a spreadsheet I had made. It listed everything, every cruel thing they had said, every moment I had stayed quiet, every dollar they had tried to take. There were notes, dates, and proof. I didn't send it to hurt them. I sent it to remind them that I had seen everything and remembered everything. Dan was shocked. Doris was probably angry. They didn't expect this from me. They thought I would always stay, always take the blame, always smile and act like nothing was wrong. But I had changed. I had grown stronger in silence. And now they couldn't reach me. I didn't check for their reactions. I didn't want to know. Their opinions no longer mattered. I had given too much of my life to their game. Now it was mine again. Every morning, I walked to a nearby park with a coffee in hand. I saw new faces, new streets, and new chances. I was building something new, quietly and slowly. There was no rush. I had time. I had peace. They could talk about me, wonder where I went, or try to explain it to others. That was their problem now, not mine. I was gone without a trace, and I wasn't coming back. 1 week after I disappeared, I sent my final letter. It wasn't long, just one envelope, neatly sealed and sent to the house I once lived in. Inside was something I had waited for the perfect moment to reveal. I knew they would open it. I knew they wouldn't expect what was inside. The letter was simple, but I made sure it said everything I needed to say. With it, I included one thing, a framed copy of the deposit receipt. The real check, the one Doris thought she destroyed, had been safely cashed before she ever found the fake one. The receipt showed the full amount, $50,000, clear and official. My name, the date, the bank. It was proof. That moment when she had laughed and burned the fake check, thinking she had taken everything from me, I had already won. She never knew it. She never even guessed it. She believed she had ruined my chance to build something of my own. But I had already taken the first step long before she touched the fake paper. In the letter, I wrote, "This is what $50,000 and a clean break looks like. You said I deserved nothing. I finally agree. That's why you'll get nothing from me ever again." I kept my words short and direct. There was nothing left to explain. They didn't need my side of the story. They had never wanted to hear it anyway. I didn't owe them anything. Not my voice. Not my time. Not my forgiveness. At the end of the letter, I added a final note. "P.S. Tell your son he can ask his mommy for alimony." That part was for Dan. I knew it would sting, but it was honest. He had stood by and watched as I was put down again and again. He chose silence every time. Now he would face silence in return. A silence filled with distance, choice, and freedom. After sending the letter, I turned off the phone I used to contact the lawyer and tossed it away. I didn't need to hear anything back. I had no interest in how they reacted. Whether they yelled, cried, or denied it all didn't matter. My part was done. I sat in my small apartment that evening, looking out the window as the sun went down. The streets were quiet. A dog barked in the distance. Somewhere people were laughing. Life was moving forward, and so was I. What mattered now was what I built next. My plans, my space, my peace. I had started fresh. No one controlled me. No one spoke for me. No one took from me anymore. Doris once believed I had no power, that I was weak, quiet, easy to push. But I had learned that real strength doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it just walks away and never looks back. And that's exactly what I did. The new town was quiet and kind. Nobody knew me, and that was exactly what I wanted. I used part of the money to open a small bakery cafe on the corner of a cozy street. I named it after my grandmother, using my maiden name. The space was warm, simple, and filled with the smell of fresh bread and sweet cakes. People came in every morning, smiled, and came back the next day. Slowly, it became a place people loved. I worked hard, but I was happy. Every little detail was mine. The colors, the menu, the name on the sign, it all belonged to me. For the first time in years, I felt free. No one yelled. No one watched my every move. No one called me lazy. No one questioned my choices. The cafe became more than a business. It became my safe place. My customers didn't know my past, and they didn't need to. They just saw someone who baked with care and greeted them with kindness. One day, I got a message through a mutual friend. My sister, who I hadn't spoken to in years, wanted to reconnect. We had grown apart over time, mostly because of how I had been living. I was afraid to let anyone close. But I was ready now. We met for coffee. She hugged me tightly. We talked for hours like no time had passed. It felt like getting a piece of myself back. Sometimes I traveled with her. We visited quiet towns, small museums, and local shops. I took photos, laughed more, and slept better. There was no guilt, no fear. Just life moving forward. I was healing little by little. Dan tried to find me once. I heard from my lawyer that he called around. But I was protected. My name had changed. My address was private. My cafe wasn't listed under the name he knew. Even if he found the town, he wouldn't recognize me. I had changed my look in my life. And even if he did, he couldn't touch me. Not legally, not emotionally. He had lost that right the moment he chose silence. One morning, I placed a small sign in the cafe window. Simple, black letters on white paper. It said, "We don't serve narcissists, abusers, or their enablers." Yes, that means you, Doris. I didn't expect most people to understand the meaning, but I did. And if one day either of them walked by, they'd understand it too. That was enough. I wiped down the counter, refilled the cookie jar, and smiled as the bell above the door rang. A new customer walked in, and I welcomed them with peace in my heart. My life was mine now, quiet, strong, and finally free. Was walking away from Doris and Dan the right move for her, or should she have given them another chance despite everything? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoy stories about standing your ground, quiet revenge, and fresh beginnings, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's coming next.